Hi, everyone. Thanks again for coming, and thank you very much for your patience. We're still trying to resolve a small technical issue, but we're going to give a start to our today's session. I'm Enzo Martelli Moya, a PhD student in Carl Nelson's Restoration Ecology Lab at the University of Montana. I'm co-organizing this webinar with Laurel Sindwald, a recent PhD graduate from Diana Tombach's Forest Ecology Lab at CU Denver, and Lou DeLoisi, a PhD student in Daniel Ulrich Lab at Montana State University. If you've missed any of the previous installments, you can find the recordings of the talks on our YouTube channel, which I'll leave the link for that and also our website on the chat in a couple minutes. Before our main speaker today, we're going to start with a brief announcement from our Executive Director, Julie Shammer, which I'm going to introduce now. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Enzo, and thanks everyone for being here today. I am the Executive Director of the Whitebark Pine Ecosystem Foundation, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about this year's conference. And I think if I can share a screen, Enzo.
1 second.
Okay. So our conference this year is going to be at Anthony Lake Ski Resort in Eastern Oregon. And so this is our website. You can find this information on the Whitebark Pine Ecosystem Foundation website, which is whitebarkfound.org. And it's under news and events, and then under conferences, this year's conference over here. So the conference is going to be September 19th and 20th, and it's at Anthony Lakes Mountain Resort in Oregon. And we're currently looking for presenters and people to give talks and have posters for the conference. So if you are interested in presenting at the conference this year, go ahead and get in touch with Teresa Lorenz. We have a conference team in Oregon that is organizing the conference, and Teresa Lorenz is in charge of putting together the presentations. So go ahead and send her your title and short description, or your proposed talk or poster. So she would like those by April 1st. And so the conference is going to be, the presentations are going to be on the 19th, and then depending on how many presentations we have, they may extend into the 20th, and then on the 20th, we're going to have a field trip at Anthony Lakes. And Anthony Lakes has done a lot of whitebark pine restoration work. They've worked with the Forest Service over there to do some planting, I believe, and some other work. They have some educational signs and things up as well. So we'll get to go out and see that, which should be really interesting. And let's see. Anthony Lakes is it's between Baker and LeGrand, Oregon. So you want to go ahead and check out what your drive would look like to see about getting there. Let's see. If anybody has questions about that, I can go ahead and put the link in the chat box whenever I'm off here, so you guys can take a look at this information. Registration for the conference, we're going to get that up on our website, and that will be probably end of April, sometime in May. But we'll send out information in the email newsletter when the registration is up, and folks can start getting registered. And let's see. I also want to thank our webinar team today, because so Laura, Lou, and Enzo have done a great job of getting webinar presenters for the webinar. You can find that information on that same link under news and events on our website. Current webinar series info is here. And then if you have missed any of the webinars, this past webinar link, that links to our YouTube page. So you can go through and listen to any of these great webinars that you've missed. And there's a bunch of them from the last 3 years. So check those out, share with people, and always get in touch if you have questions. Thanks, everyone.
All right, welcome, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, it is my pleasure to now introduce our today's speaker, Mike Giesey. Mike is one of the Whitebark Pine Ecosystem Foundation's board members and the current Ski Area Partnership Committee chair. He has a degree in forest resource management from West Virginia University and began his forest service career in 1980 as a volunteer on the Kootenai National Forest in Libby, Montana. His relationship with forest management allowed him to work in the private forest products industry in both Montana and Florida, and also worked for many years as a seasonal worker for the Forest Service until he got his position as a forest silviculturist for the Kootenai National Forest, where he retired from in 2016. Within his career, Mike also cultivated more than 20 years of experience as a certified tree climber, where he had the opportunity to serve as a trainer, as well as the Region 1 Tree Climate Technical Advisor in 2014. During his many years working as a tree climber and silviculturist, Mike has always been intrigued with whitebark pine, volunteered to promote this species, and also helping design vegetation management projects to promote the recovery of whitebark pine. So if anyone has any questions for Mike, please type them into the chat or virtually raise your hand at the end of his talk to enable you to set your microphone. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Enzo. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm going to give you the lowdown on the whitebark pine friendly ski area certification program that the foundation has had in place since about 2015. I believe that's about right before I started on the board. I've been on the board since fall of 2016. So I will get started with my presentation. All right. Great quote that's very appropriate to educating people about whitebark pine, that no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they've never experienced. So my whitebark pine story, as Enzo mentioned, I retired from the Forest Service, 6-7 years ago now. Tree climber and tree climbing instructor. Involved in a lot of whitebark pine restoration efforts, and I'm the committee chair for the Ski Area Partnership Committee. And I've been a ski patroller at our local Turner Mountain volunteer patroller for 25 plus years. So this presentation, I've used a version of it. I presented at the Intermountain Ski Area Association conference, annual conference last June in Utah, Snowbird. A bunch of ski areas that are in that association gather every year. And so I had the chance to present to a number of them. So this presentation has some information about whitebark pine, and I'll kind of cruise through that kind of quick, since I think most of you know a bit about whitebark pine, but bear with me. But before I get into the specifics of the certification program. So again, some of this is basic. 5-needle pine, long-lived, high elevation. It's a keystone species, obviously, creating some habitat for other vegetation. It's in serious decline, listed as threatened by the Forest Service or the Fish and Wildlife Service, and depends how you look at it. December 22, January 23, it was actually signed. Clark's nutcracker plays a huge role in dispersing that species. Let's see. So, again, more basics, shrub-like growth, and in the extreme environments. And like this one on the picture to the right, that's at the top of Lookout Pass ski area that's right on the border of Montana and Idaho. And that was the only whitebark I found up there. I didn't scour real heavily, but and it was kind of tricky to tell that one from the lodgepole pine and Doug fir growing nearby. But those upswept ranches, classic kind of a whitebark look for the more tall, straight trees that we see occasionally. Habitat and range, inhabits over 80 million acres in Western North America. 70% is in the US, and of that, 90% is on public lands. There are ranges of the Pacific states, BC, throughout the Rocky Mountains of the U.S. and Canada. And there's a lot of ski areas that operate in whitebark pine country. That provides a great opportunity for outdoor recreationists to get close to this tree. Some of the landscape benefits: it retains snowpack, helps to create a long ski season. This year around here we have very, very little snow, so keeping what we have is even that much more important. Stabilizes soil, can reduce avalanche hazards by becoming anchors in that snowpack. And of course, they produce those big, large seeds that lots of wildlife depend on. Ecological threats: blister rust, mountain pine beetle, and altered fire regimes, and the effects of climate change on all of those. Conservation status: 325 million at least whitebark have died. In some areas up to 90% of the trees are gone, and we are left with the ghost forests. This picture to the right is at our conference in Stanley a number of years ago, and you can see those all dead whitebark pine there, and some live ones. Canada listed this tree as endangered under their equivalent of the Endangered Species Act in 2012. We were a little slower to come around to and then, like I mentioned, it's listed in the U.S. just recently. Some of the restoration efforts, obviously, some of them I think are obvious. Reducing competition, give them some more resources so they can fight the beetle and the rust. Try to protect those trees that are trees that are alive. If they're alive in a sea of dead, then we know they might be really lucky, or most likely they've got some genetic traits that might be useful. Short film.
Our pine is facing an unprecedented crisis, as more than 200 million trees have died due to disease, pests, and climate change. So, experts are working on a plan to save this important tree and all the benefits it provides to the environment and humans. This plan includes identifying and planting seeds from genetically disease-resistant parent trees, collecting seeds from various locations to preserve genetic diversity, planting in areas suitable for the future climate, avoiding damage from insects, managing forests to reduce fire risk. Whitebark pine is now listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. Restoration work is underway, but we need to act now to save this keystone species. How you can help them save the whitebark.
Restoration efforts, ongoing efforts to identify trees that might have some genetic resistance to those agents that are killing them off. Whitebark Pine Ecosystem Foundation has been working with federal and tribal partners to create the National Whitebark Pine Restoration Plan. We're trying to raise awareness and funding to protect whitebark pine, and that's one of the focus areas of the ski area certification program. And then the idea is to get some of those genetics out in the landscape in numbers enough to where the Clark's Nutcracker will finish the restoration job by distributing those seeds across the landscape. There's a number of strict restrictions, of course, Endangered Species Act listing. You can't cut, you can't prune, you can't put, you're not supposed to possess any whitebark pine parts or pieces or cones without some documentation. Interesting side note, ESA does not apply to private lands at this time, but states may choose to adopt a policy similar to the Endangered Species Act. But to my knowledge, that has not been done yet. I've got a little sheet from Fish and Wildlife Service on kind of conservation measures in whitebark pine management. I kind of called it BMPs, best management practices, but that's not what they called it. And one side note is, ski areas need to manage their vegetation. They've got ingrowth on open slopes that they need to maintain those open slopes for skier safety. They've got tree skiing, again, that they want to keep bigger trees and remove the smaller trees. There's expansion going on. You might have heard about Jackson Hole doing a whole bunch of different projects in their area that are going to affect whitebark pine. And we recognize that as part of the program, that there is going to be some whitebark pine being removed from ski areas. And that's kind of the end of the kind of whitebark pine basic information. Now I'm going to get into the meat and bones of certification program. So it started in 2016 when Whitefish Mountain Resort was the first skier to be certified in the Northwest Montana Whitefish area. They've been doing some great whitebark pine there for years, educational and management wise. They partner with the Forest Service and assist in cone collection and other collections like scion and pollen, etc. The idea is it's going to increase awareness among skiers and their patrons about whitebark pine and its status. And it kind of provides an opportunity for ski areas to get directly involved in restoration efforts. And that picture is in 2016 when they first got certified. You might recognize a few folks there. The key to this program is it's the easiest way for most people to see whitebark pine. You jump on a ski lift, the bottom of the mountain, you get up on the top and bang, you can be in whitebark pine. Doesn't get any easier than that. Many ski areas have whitebark pine in the West. Not all for sure. I have a spreadsheet that I started years ago to try to keep track of which ones do and which don't. And I'll show that to you in a little bit. And it's a great access for land managers. Whitefish Mountain and many other areas, they'll give the Forest Service free access to the lift in order to get up to do some work on whitebark pine if it's in the wintertime, and the same in the summer if the lifts are operational, or oftentimes there's road access to parts of the ski area. I know Whitefish has a number of plus trees that they've been cone collecting on for a number of years. So it's really slick for access because, as you know, whitebark grows in remote country. And access is one of the big limitations on doing any kind of management or cone collection, etc. The goals and motivation of the program really are to recognize ski areas that are, leaders in conservation and restoration and education, and then to just spread the word. We want to educate the staff and resort employees as well as the public that is in those areas. More goals and motivation that, we help those ski areas in their efforts with conservation and restoration. And it provides another way for the ski area patrons to get involved in whitebark pine restoration. Current skiers, like I mentioned, Whitefish was the first to get certified. We only have 4 in the U.S. right now. Whitefish Mountain, Bachelor, Yellowstone Club, and Brundage are all 4 certified. And then we have a handful that are in the process working towards certification: Mammoth Mountain, June Mountain in California, Anthony Lakes in Oregon, where our conference is going to be, Sun Valley, Big Sky, Lost Trail. And we have the same program, pretty much same program running in Canada. Whitebark Pine Ecosystem Foundation of Canada has a very active group working on certification. Panorama Mountain is certified, and Sorcerer Lodge, a backcountry lodge, is certified, and they have a number of others that are working towards certification. And here's a
Mountain Resort, it ended up being in 2016, and correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, the first ski area to actually be certified as a ski area that's friendly to whitebark pine and managing whitebark pine.
What's most critical is that it's the right site.
The seeds and cones were collected here in 2014 up on Big Mountain. They were collected from the Good Medicine, Ptarmigan Bowl area on the front side as you guys came up the chairlift. The cones were collected from there. And so the seedlings we're going to be planting today will be collected from that year collected. And there are 5 elements in that criteria that the mountain would have to pass to get that certification. Remember, they were certified in 2016. So the 5 emphasis areas are conservation, education. We have actual management, active management, restoration, and research. So those are the 5 things. Whitefish Mountain.
right. Certification requirements. That was Carl Anderson from the Flathead National Forest mentioning this same thing. Education, conservation, management, restoration, and research are the kind of the categories. Under education, we want to educate the resort employees and the public. You know, we want those resort employees, especially those out in the field doing some sawing, glading, tree work, to know what a whitebark pine looks like and what they're supposed to do when they encounter one. Of course, all that's changed now that it's listed. They can't do anything without prior approval. We'd like them to label at least one whitebark pine on their slopes so that the public can see one for real and know what they look like, or at least have an idea. We have this poster like the one that's to the right here that the foundation created, general educational information. We also we got a grant a year ago, and Julie and Tio and I created an interpretive sign for ski areas that I'll show you in a little bit. Again, it's all about education. We want them to incorporate whitebark pine information in their educational programs if they have them, and if they don't, we encourage them to start that. Some of them have summer programs as well. That'd be a great combination to educate the public and their customers. More educational things. Display ski area created poster, offer snowshoe walks, to talk about whitebark pine and ecology and conservation efforts. Incorporate whitebark pine information into summertime guided hikes, and to create outdoor educational display. Conservation, create a whitebark pine distribution map. You know, we want them to know where those whitebark on their slopes are, so when it does come time to expand or move a lift or put a new lift in, they know where their whitebark are and they can do their best to avoid them. Incorporate a conservation plan into resort management and their expansion plans. And again, we just want them to do it wisely. If they're going to expand, you know, do their best to avoid whitebark, especially cone-bearing whitebark. But that all has to go through, if they're on public land, that has to all go through Fish and Wildlife Service now that it's listed. A really interesting example, Yellowstone Club, which you might know, is a private ski resort in Montana, and it's all on private land, and they just got certified as whitebark friendly. They've done some fantastic work with whitebark, fuels reduction, transplanting trees out of slopes that they would otherwise cut. They hand dug over 300 whitebark pine and moved them to an area that they wouldn't need to be cut in the future. With mixed success, and they did some monitoring in order to determine maybe some of the best methods to do that. And again, they're in private land, so they don't need to conform to Endangered Species Act. But I think it's a real highlight for them that their forester there, Jeff Kadri, is a real champion of whitebark and has done just a great job up there. And then we want to develop a monitoring plan. Doesn't have to be super formal. But we just want to gauge what's going on with the whitebark on their within their ski area boundary. Management, restoration, and research. We want them to actively manage one or more of the following kind of options. You know, protect large whitebark pine from mountain pine beetle attack, which you may know would be the verbenone packets. That is one way to do that. Pruning white pine blister rust infected trees. You know, that's an effective method of removing the rust from trees. Is by pruning them depending on where the canker is. Reduce fuels around whitebark. Identify suitable sites for planting, somewhere that they don't plan to ever expand into, maybe protected area, what area that skiers don't have access to. Make that their center for whitebark pine and do some good work in there, rather than out in their slopes where they are just going to, trees are probably going to grow up and be in the way in the future. Agree to host plus trees, and agree to host ecology study or long-term monitoring project with research partners. And all this, if you're on federal land, it's all pretty easy because the mountain really doesn't have to do that much. Since it's federal land, the feds are going to manage that piece of ground in conjunction with the ski resort, but it's pretty easy for them. Generally, we tried to do it this way to make it fairly easy to get certified. We don't want it to be too daunting. And then the benefits of certification: recognition as a leader, environmental stewardship by leading the way in whitebark pine. You know, kind of toot your own horn. If they've been doing good work, we help them get that word out. We supply certification plaque, a sign, a poster, and we help and we do some media promotions. And we provide all kinds of guidance on whitebark pine education, conservation, and management as well. And we help, we provide education and outreach materials. Some of the support from the foundation, you know, we're a good resource for information and education and training. We'll go to the area and do a presentation to their staff and or the public, do an evening presentation for some of their customers, just to educate them on the basics of whitebark pine and its importance. We'll help them, of course, through the whole certification process. And then we maintain a link to the ski area on our website, and they do the same, vice versa. And so that is the end of that presentation. And let me show you a couple of the things I talked about here. This is the sign that we created through a grant. There we go.
Mike,
Yes.
1 second. I recommend you to stop sharing and sharing again because you're only sharing your presentation screen.
Okay. Can you see the sign now? Preserving powder and protecting the summit?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the sign was actually very challenging because we had to be short and sweet, thinking that this is going to be on the top of a mountain ski area. People are going to be obviously dressed in ski gear and goggles and probably aren't going to want to stand around and read a really long in-depth sign. So it was really a challenge to keep it short and sweet because there's so much information that we would like to get across. But this is what we came up with. We were pretty happy with it. We got a grant to print about 5 of them. They're very expensive. With shipping, they're close to $2,000 a piece. But they're made of some real high quality material that's made for the outdoors and extreme environments, and they don't fade for many, many years. So we're going to be excited to get those out. Yeah. And okay, the bottom right, see that blank area? That's where the ski area logo would go next to the foundation logo. And then if they're on Forest Service land, then the Forest Service logo would go next to that as well. Oh, and this is my spreadsheet of all the ski areas. And it may not be complete, but I don't know if you can see the tabs at the bottom. This is Washington.
Yeah, Mike, we have the same thing
Okay, same
with this
thing.
one too.
Copy. Apologize for my lack of ability. Zoom. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a spreadsheet, pretty basic. Ski area name, do they have whitebark pine, yes or no? And that, like I said, this may not be complete or totally accurate. The yeses are, we've got confirmation on for sure. Washington, Idaho, et cetera, et cetera. So I would ask participants today if anybody has a favorite ski area that has whitebark pine that they would be interested in helping them get certified, or just want to connect me with them, or if you know someone that works at the resort, kind of breach that topic, I'd be glad to talk to them, meet with them, make a presentation, what have you, to get more ski areas involved. It's been kind of a slow process. Some ski areas were a little nervous before ESA that somehow being certified and doing a conservation plan would limit their ability to expand or glade runs and that kind of thing. And we've tried to emphasize it. No, that's not what we're about. We want you to do it wisely, know where they are, protect the cone bearings, trees as much as possible. But just do it wisely. And I think that is all I have. I'd love to answer any questions if anybody has. And my email is mike.giesey. I could put in the chat at whitebarkfound.org.
Thank you very much, Mike, for your presentation. That's really informative. We do have a couple questions for today. The first one is directed by Greg Denito, and it says, has this or will this program be expanded to ski areas with limber pine or other 5-needle pines?
That's a great question. And yes, absolutely. I know the foundation, we expanded our sort of focus from white bark only to all high elevation white pines. And so, yes, we haven't done that yet, but it certainly would fit. Same things would work for those other species. So thanks for that, Greg.
Thank you, Mike. The next one comes from Jessica Mann, and it says, can a ski area post this poster or this educational display if they are in the process of getting certified, or have to wait until they get certified to put it up?
The wording in that sign says you are at a very special place, a white bark pine friendly ski area. So the way it's designed right now is they need to be certified in order to display the sign. Now we had a ski area, Bridger in Montana, that doesn't have very many white bark pine. And they were interested in maybe displaying the sign, and we're going to work with them to try to make that work. We're hoping that they'd be interested enough to get certified, but I think their concern is they don't have very many white bark pine. But then the dilemma is, well, maybe they're that much more important since you don't have very many. Certification isn't that difficult, so we'll work with them, and we can always, the sign is ours. We had a contractor that helped us, an interpretive contractor that helped us design and do the wording and the art with that. But we own it now, and so we can change the wording and stuff. And so we would work with areas because we just want to get the educational piece out there. That's the bottom line. But at this time, it's brand new, so we haven't done any of that, but we would certainly be open to that.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. There is another question coming from Marnie Duthie Holt that says, does this certification apply in Canada as well?
Yes. Yeah, Canada has the same program that they're running. So yes, same thing. Canada is working hard. They've got a lot of areas that are working towards certification, but they only have 2 that are certified right now. But they've got a whole bunch that are working towards certification. And like I mentioned with Bridger, they have very few whitebark pine, and you get into some areas like Big Sky or Mammoth. I think in some places you can't hardly take a step without stepping on a whitebark pine. So you've got this extreme differences. That Lookout Pass in Idaho, Montana border, they have very few. Like I said, I only saw one. So I don't know. I think maybe they take on a little bit different importance when you have very few compared to when you have a lot. But bottom line is, are there any healthy ones? And that's where we need to focus.
Nice. Thank you. There is another question here that says, just wondering, this one is from John Barley. It says, great presentation, Mike. Just wondering if any work or discussion has been done to educate backcountry user groups and whether these signs could be possibly modified for trailhead signs.
Yeah, we would love to do that. We haven't done anything with backcountry groups to date. But that ski area or the backcountry area in Canada that I mentioned, I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, they're a fly in. I think you fly in, stay at the hut, and backcountry from there. And they were the first in Canada to get certified. Sorcerer Lodge is what it's called. But that's something that we've had the thought of, John. Thanks for bringing that up. It'd be great to get some of this kind of educational information at a trailhead or along a trail. It gets a little sticky with Forest Service. It took us a long time to get approval to put these signs up at some of the areas that are on Forest Service land. It's just red tape, I think, but there is a process there. And that might be a little tricky, but that's something we definitely have on the radar.
Thank you, Mike. I have a question regarding also how can anybody like incorporate or suggest one of these areas. I'm asking this because I'm aware that there is, I'm not quite sure whether it's a ski resort, but at the least it's an area that has a tram for access in the Wallowa-Whitman National Forest nearby Joseph, where people can go up the mountain, and there are some interpretative trails and some displays as well, but I'm not well aware whether how would be the process there. So if I were to propose that area, what type of contact would I have to get before getting them to you?
I'm not sure I understand the question. What kind of, just working with the foundation?
So like which person's contact would I have to get and send them to you? Would it have to be the manager, or who would be the person to talk to propose them the program?
Oh, that's always a tough one, because what I've run into is you'll find somebody that's interested, has some knowledge about whitebark pine that's a little lower on the pay scale than some of the other folks at the resort, and those folks are interested in it, but once it goes up the line to more of the managers of the ski area, sometimes it stops there, just doesn't go any further. So the higher you can get in the organization, the better. It seems like marketing people are oftentimes who we work with, as well as operations, kind of the either general manager or ops managers for the ski areas seem to be the best contact. But any way you can kind of get in the door and spread the word, educate them a little bit, And certainly with the recent listing, that's helped kind of raise the awareness of everybody about whitebark pine, right?
All right, and we have time for one last question, but any other questions or suggestions or comments can be addressed directly to Mike, or you can just send it to us and we'll forward them to him later. The last question comes from Matthew Brophy. It says, if there is seed collecting as part of this program, where does the seed go? Are they propagated or long-term storage?
That's all part of the at least the stuff on federal land. It's all coordinated by the Forest Service or the BLM or whoever the federal agency is. The Forest Service case, those seeds go to the nursery, whatever their local nursery is. It's probably Coeur d'Alene or Dorina in Oregon, where then those geneticists take it from there, and they're the ones that will do the rust screening and that kind of thing to determine if there is some resistance in those trees, to know whether they're kind of a fit for restoration. So no, they don't store them because we don't know if they've got genetic resistance, at least in the initial plantings. I mean, the initial collections. Once that tree's been tested and if it's confirmed to have some genetic resistance, then more collections happen. They cross those trees with other trees that have a different type of resistance, test those offspring, and then the product of those, if it's has good resistance, then those go into operational plantings. So it's quite a process.
All right, thank you so much, Mike, for your presentation today. And without further ado, I wanted to remind everybody that we're still in the process of determining what is going to happen with our next session in March, but the next confirmed webinar will be on April 16th with Sean Hoyk-Skuvik presenting his work on responses of whitebark pine to abiotic stress, implications of physiology across scales. So thanks again, everyone, for attending. Thanks again, Mike, for your presentation, and we hope to see you soon. Have a good week.
Thanks, everybody.